Hey, it's Doug with Backcountry Pilgrim. Today I want to talk to you about how I pack my backpack. This is not a video telling you how to pack your backpack, but it will give you some guidelines that may be helpful. The backpack that I am going to be packing is a 40-liter kind of standard ultralight layout backpack. What I mean by standard ultralight layout is that you've basically got one internal body, and then on the outside you've got a big pocket on the front and two fairly sizable ones on the sides, and that is about it for organization. Now, the reason many ultralight backpacks are laid out like this is because extra organization built into the pack also adds weight. If you want organization in your pack and you don't just want to throw everything in there, then for a pack like this, you're going to want to use stuff sacks or something like that in order to pack it, because otherwise you're just going to have a big bag full of stuff. Another thing you might notice if you're not used to this kind of backpack is that there is an emphasis on external storage. That is, gear that is going to be on the outside of the pack that you can get to quickly. So now that you understand the layout of this kind of backpack, let me go over my theory on how to pack it. There are two main things that I consider when I'm thinking about how to pack my backpack. One of those has to do with weight distribution. In general, you want the heavier things higher up and closer to your body. The other consideration is order of use. I want to pack my pack in such a way that it is very efficient, that I can get to the things that I need when I need them, and that requires intentionally packing in a certain order. For teaching purposes, I'm going to break my backpack into 3 zones. Zone 1 is the main body of the pack. This is the area that you are not going to be able to get into very easily, because on packs like these, you usually have some kind of enclosure on the top to keep it sealed off from the elements, and it's just not a very convenient area to get into. Zone 1 is internal storage. Zone 2, as you might expect, is external storage, but it's limited to the external storage that I cannot reach while I have the pack on. Zone 3 is going to also be external storage, but it's going to be the areas that I can reach while the pack is still on my body. And then, just to complete the system, Zone 4 are the pockets of my pants or a fanny pack. I'll explain why that is important as I go along. All right, so let's start with Zone 1. This is the first zone that I'm going to pack, and because I want to be able to get to my gear in the order that I need it, I actually need to pack it in reverse order. So the first thing that should go into my backpack in Zone 1 is the very last thing that I think I will be wanting to take out of the pack. In this case, that's going to be my sleep system. My sleep system is always the very last thing that I set up when I get to camp. I'm definitely not going to set my sleep system up outside of the tent and then try to get it inside. So I know that I'm going to want the tent set up before the sleep system. Further, because your sleep system is one of the most sensitive to the elements, you really don't want it exposed anytime you open the backpack, and you want to move it inside your shelter once you do take it out. A third reason to pack my sleep system first is that because it is very puffy and cushy, it tends to fill in all of the gaps in the bottom of the pack and provide a nice shock-absorbing layer for the rest of the gear that's going to go inside the internal part of the backpack. Now, because the sleep system is usually very sensitive to the elements, especially moisture, I'm actually going to be putting it inside of a dry bag of some kind. This is just a standard trash compactor bag. I find these to be very good on trail. So what I'm going to be doing is taking this and opening it up, putting it inside the pack, filling the interior, and then I'm just going to stuff my sleeping bag or quilt inside of it. Okay, there we go. Now, one thing I want to say about the sleep system is that if you have a compression bag and it fits very well once it's inside, feel free to use it. I personally don't like them because once something is crammed into a shape, that shape has to fit inside, and it always leaves gaps. By just stuffing the quilt or sleeping bag inside, I don't have to worry about missing out on any usage of space. Also keep in mind that if you have a sleeping bag, you should probably zip it up so that the zipper is not catching on things, and you want to stuff it feet first so that the air is pushed out while you're stuffing, and you don't end up with a big sleeping bag bubble that you're trying to cram into your pack. Now, the reason that a sleep system is usually very sensitive to moisture is because it is filled with down. Once down gets wet, it does not dry out very quickly, and it becomes pretty much useless as an insulator. So if I have any other down gear, I'm going to put it inside this bag as well. So for example, here is my down puffy. I shouldn't need this on trail because it's way too warm to hike in. So I'm just going to put it in with my other down stuff. Now, if I had some down booties or a down pillow or anything else that was not only down, but I also would not need on trail, that's going to go inside the dry bag, in this case, the trash compactor bag as well. Once everything is in there that I want to absolutely keep dry, I'm just going to smush it down, push the air out, give the bag a couple twists, and fold it over. Now, just in case you are wondering, my pack is now full to about here. So all of this is now a nice cushy layer. It's going to keep gear from banging against my back while I'm hiking, and it's going to keep the heavier things higher up. Okay, next I'm going to put in my food bag. This is my Hilltop Packs food bag. Also has some gear to hang it on a tree. However, if I'm in an area that requires a bear canister, I'm pretty much definitely going to want that next because those things are so big that not a whole lot else is going to fit in this pack once I put it inside. I know some people like to carry theirs on the outside. I do not, and I don't need to with this pack for this trip. So I'm just going to put the food on top of the soft cushion that I just made right up against my back. Okay, now that the food is in, I have about an arm's width of space on either side of the pack left for gear. So this is a good place to put longer cylindrical things that are able to conform into the shape that they are stuffed into. So what I'm going to do now is put in my shelter. That is a ground sheet, tent, or rain fly, or some combination of all of them built into one. I should definitely not need my shelter until I am at camp, so that's another item that's going to go in the pack, and this is a good place to put it. That's going to go in next, right next to the food. Now, this is a pretty large tent. Honestly, for this pack, it's probably too much, but it's what I grabbed for the demonstration. The other thing that's going to go in here is my sleep pad. Now, there are a couple different uses for this. Right now, I've got it in the stuff sack that it came in. It is going to fit in here just as it is, so that is totally fine. However, if you have a very ultralight pack, or one that maybe doesn't have the kind of cushion you'd like to have between you and a bear canister, these can be unrolled and then folded into the size of the back of your backpack, slid down the back, and then that becomes extra cushion for you. Now, this is probably something you would want to do right after your sleep system. Plus, it's part of your sleep system, so it kind of makes sense that it's going to be all together. For now, I'm just going to put this in the side next to my food. All right, the last thing that I might want to put inside the internal part of the pack is going to be my Ditty Bag. This is one bag that holds all my little stuff that's going to get lost or fall into the cracks somewhere if I don't keep it in one place. Now, depending on how the pack is set up, if I've got a lot of external storage, the Ditty Bag might go on the outside. It is a Dyneema waterproof bag. I don't need to worry about it being on the outside. However, it's usually full of stuff that I don't need while on trail, so technically it's kind of a zone 1 item, but if my pack is getting pretty full and I've got good storage on the outside, it may go there. So that is kind of a variable. In my Ditty Bag, I've got the 10 essentials in various configurations: headlamp, glasses, med kit, bug net, compass, and poop kit. It's not a bad idea to keep it outside of the Ditty Bag. However, this is just a trowel with some things that I will throw away. There's nothing gross in my poop kit. So I'm going to roll up the pack and then put this in the front pocket. Now that I have all the gear that I'm only going to use at the campground packed into Zone 1, I'm going to move on to Zone 2, external storage that I can't reach while the pack is on. This zone holds the gear that you will probably want while you're on your way to your campground, but not while you're actually hiking. We're going to start with the rain jacket. This is something I want to be able to get to pretty quickly if it starts to rain. And I especially don't want to have to open my pack and let the rain fall into it while I'm digging around trying to find this. So this is going to go on my outside storage. Two things that I generally do not want in Zone 1 with all of my expensive soft gear are the tent poles and tent stakes that go with my shelter. So even though technically these are a Zone 1 kind of item, I'm going to keep them in Zone 2 because I want them out where they're not going to be able to hurt anything. Also, tall things go better on the outside anyway, and so this is going to work out just fine. So I'm going to take up one of my side pockets and the straps on the side to put the rest of my shelter gear. Other gear that I pretty much always want on the exterior part of my pack is my water filtration kit. This particular one combines a filter with a dirty water bag. The reason I want these on the exterior of the pack is that I am going to probably use these on trail, not just when I get to camp, so I do want to be able to get to them quickly. Another reason is that these are going to be wet and dripping, so I don't want them inside the pack dripping on the gear that is inside. Keeping the water filter kit in a nice mesh pocket also gives it the opportunity to dry out while I'm hiking. Now, two things that I always struggle with are my cook kit and camp mug. Now, I like to have both of these, but because they are a hard shell that can't compress, it's usually pretty difficult to get them inside the pack body unless I've got a much larger pack. And even in a large pack, they very rarely fit in any of the external pockets if they zip closed. Even a large lid will sometimes struggle with this kind of thing. So on this kind of a pack, I'll usually put these in one of the side pockets. Okay, they're not both going to fit in the side pocket, so one thing to keep in mind is that things can go in other things. Because I have this hard shell mug, this actually makes a nice little protective case for my water filtration kit. So I'm just going to put it in there, put the whole thing in the pocket. Now, you might be saying to yourself, why is he putting his cook kit, which he'll use in camp, in Zone 2? Well, besides the difficulty of fitting the cook kit into Zone 1, I also sometimes like to take a coffee break on longer hikes. Or if it's going to be the kind of hike where I think I'm going to actually want a hot meal for lunch, having the cook kit on the outside of the pack is actually pretty convenient. Also, the cook kit forms a nice floor for a tall thing going down the side. So for example, if I've got something like a camp chair that I don't want just dangling off the side, I can strap it to the side and just sit it right on top of the cook kit. All right, well, the backpack is basically packed now. I only need to fit a few more things in there, and that brings us to Zone 3. Zone 3 is the external storage that can be reached without taking the pack off. The things that I like to keep in Zone 3 are the things that I am going to want while I'm actually in motion on the trail. If you're anything like me, once you get going, it is very difficult to want to stop. And so what I find is that if there is certain gear that I want, but I have to stop and move the pack around to get it, I'll usually just skip it. And this can be anywhere from annoying to dangerous. So for example, the things that I want in Zone 3 are going to be my water, so I have hydration handy, easy to get to, my snacks, so I have nutrition, also easy to get to. I'm also going to want things like bug spray, sunscreen, chapstick, the kind of stuff that I really should be putting on for my health, but that I will probably skip if I'm in the groove and don't want to stop and fish around for it. So for these kinds of items, I prefer shoulder harness or hip belt storage. So on one shoulder strap, I have a water bottle holder. This is big enough to hold a full liter water bottle. Then I've also got a shoulder pouch. This is where I'm going to place things like sunscreen, bug spray, and possibly a snack or some drink mix, anything that I might want to be able to grab quickly. If you have hip belt pockets, or if you have added one like I have here, that can be a good place to keep the same kinds of things. Typically, I prefer things to be on my shoulder so that I can get to them quickly without having to fumble around. My shoulder straps are also where I keep my emergency satellite locator. Last but not least are the things that I absolutely cannot do without. The things that if I lost my entire backpack, I would still want to have with me. These are my everyday pocket carry items: keys, knife, phone, wallet. Now, I carry these in the same pockets pretty much every single day of my life, so it doesn't really bother me a whole lot to have them there when I'm on trail. And you can call me paranoid, but if I have that stuff in my backpack, and let's say I'm on a break, I take the pack off and set it down, it falls down, rolls over, off a cliff into a raging river. What do I have left? Well, I better have my car keys, my wallet, and my phone, or else once I do manage to get back to my car, I'm still going to be in a lot of trouble. One rule that I have with pocket carry is that only one thing goes in each pocket. When you are hiking, the last thing you want to worry about is pulling something out of your pocket and it pulling something else out and that being lost on the trail. However, if you can't stand the thought of hiking with stuff in your pockets, then I would just suggest making sure that you have a hip belt, pocket, pouch, something like that to keep them in. Personally, I would make sure they were something that would come off, and that way if I have to set my pack down, I can hang on to that pouch. Even if your pack isn't going to fall over into a raging river, what if you have to run away from a wild animal? You're not going to want to stop and pick up that 30-pound pack before you start running, and if you are going, you want to have the stuff on you that you still need. Finally, let me talk about a couple of items that I don't always bring with me. Now, even ultralight packs usually have a specific place to put trekking poles or an ice axe. Even if you have stuff on the side already, an umbrella is not big enough to be a problem. It can go right into the side pocket and through the lashings on the side, or compression straps if they have them. So one last tip, when I am packing my backpack, I try not to rely too much on external storage because there's a good chance I'm going to be needing it for my shelter later on in the trip. If it rains and my shelter gets muddy on the bottom or soaking wet and I don't have time to wait for it to dry, I'm basically just going to be balling up a big, wet, muddy mess. And that is not something that I want to be putting into the main part of my pack with my delicate sleep system. In those cases, I am probably going to want it to be on the outside, either inside the mesh pockets where they can get some air, or hanging off the sides, hanging over the whole pack. So because I'm going to want that stuff external, I'm going to want to have some straps or some space in my mesh to hang on to those items while I am hiking and helping them to dry out. Once the sun comes out, I can maybe lay them out for a little while, get them dry, get them back inside internal storage. But in the meantime, I don't want to have my external storage maxed out and unable to accommodate that big, wet, muddy mess should I need it to. All right, I hope this video on how I pack my backpack has been helpful to you. If it has, why don't you give it a like and subscribe to Backcountry Pilgrim if you are into hiking, camping, backpacking, and the gear that goes with it. Until next time, I am Doug, and as always, thanks for watching.